In this video, we're going to talk about the quadratic formula. A quadratic equation, if you remember, is an equation of the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. We call this a second degree polynomial because the highest power is 2. Now, the graph of a quadratic equation is a parabola. Only 3 things can happen with a parabola. I'm either going to have exactly one real solution, 2 real solutions, or no real solutions, okay? So in another video, I'm going to talk to you more about quadratics. This one is just on how to use the quadratic formula. So in order for us to solve a quadratic equation, there's many ways for us to do this. One of them is by graphing to determine how many times the graph crosses the x-axis. Another one is by factoring. However, not every quadratic equation is factorable. We have completing the square, we have the square root property, and of course we have what we're learning right now, which is the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula is really important because it will solve any and all quadratic equations. So the formula is right in front on your screen. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Let's go ahead and practice with the problem. Directions: solve by factoring, then check your answers by using the quadratic formula. So in order for me to factor this, notice I have a trinomial. It is set equal to 0, which is good. And I'm looking to see what's going to multiply to give me negative 6. That's going to add to give me a negative 1. So it's going to be a negative 3 times a positive 2. So this is how I factor this equation. X minus 3 times x plus 2, because negative 3 times 2 is going to multiply to give me negative 6. Negative 3 plus positive 2 is going to give me a negative 1. So when I solve this, I have what's called the zero product property, meaning if you multiply any number by 0, it's going to give me 0. So I'm going to take each factor and I'm going to set it equal to 0. So that means x minus 3 equals 0, x plus 2 equals 0. Let's go ahead and add 3. So I get x is equal to 3. That's one of my answers. And then if I subtract 2, I get x is equal to negative 2. That's my second answer. So what I want to do right now is that we want to check our answers by basically using the quadratic formula to see if we get the same answer. On your screen, I've gone ahead and written the quadratic formula in case you don't know it by heart, although it would be a great idea for you to know it by heart. And before I substitute into the quadratic formula, you always want to make sure that the equation is set equal to 0 and in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. This way I can identify the value of a, the value of b, and the value of c. So right now the value of a is equal to positive 1, the value of b is equal to negative 1, and the value of c is equal to negative 6. So I'm ready to go ahead and substitute into the formula. I have x is equal to negative from the formula. B happens to be negative 1 plus or minus the square root of b squared. Notice I'm going to put that in parentheses so I don't make a mistake. Minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. So that means x is going to equal negative is a positive 1 plus or minus the square root of negative 1 squared is positive 1 because any number to the second power is always positive. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4 times negative 6 is positive 24 all over 2. This equals 1 plus or minus the square root of 25 all over 2. The square root of 25 is just 5. So I have 1 plus or minus 5 over 2. And so because of the plus or minus, I really have 2 possible answers. 1 plus 5 divided by 2 and 1 minus 5 divided by 2. So 1 plus 5 is 6 and 6 divided by 2 is 3. 1 minus 5 is negative 4 and negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. And if you notice, the answers that we got from the quadratic formula are exactly the same answers that we got when we factored the trinomial. Let's go ahead and try another example. Again, I've written for you the quadratic formula in the top right hand corner in case you don't know it by heart. Take a look at the equation they have given us. It is a quadratic. It is set equal to 0, which is great because when it's not set equal to 0, you're going to have to make it equal 0 first. In this case, you have it written now in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So that means that I'm ready to identify that a is equal to 3, b is equal to negative 4, and c is equal to positive 4. So let's go ahead now and substitute into the quadratic formula. X equals negative, once again, b happens to be negative, so I'm going to write negative 4 plus or minus the square root of, in parentheses, b squared, negative 4 squared, minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. So from here, I end up with negative is a positive 4 plus or minus the square root of negative 4 squared is positive 16. Negative 4 times 3 is negative 12 times 4 is negative 48 all over positive 6. And this is equal to 4 plus or minus the square root of negative 32 all over 6. So the radical negative 32, at this point you realize I cannot take the square root of negative 32. This is going to be an imaginary solution. Depending on how far you are in your algebra class or whatever class it is that you're taking, if you have not done complex numbers or imaginary numbers, then right now you would just say that there is no real solution. But if you have learned imaginary numbers, then you're going to have to break down that radical negative 32. We're going to break it down on the side. So radical negative 32, you know that this is going to be an imaginary number, so I'm going to write radical 32, and the I is going to come out. Now, radical 32 is the same thing as the square root of 16 times the square root of 2, so this is going to equal 4 radical 2i, and a lot of times, so that we don't misplace the I and the radical, we're going to write this as 4i radical 2. So our answer is going to equal 4 plus or minus 4i radical 2 all over 6. All of the coefficients, the 4, and the 6 are all even numbers. That means that I can simplify this and I can divide everything by 2. Do not touch what's inside the radical, even though it is divisible by 2, because the square root of 2 is a decimal, and so you don't want to touch that, okay? We're looking at basically all of these coefficients, the numbers that are outside of the radical. And those are all even numbers, and that is why we can go ahead now and simplify dividing those numbers by 2. So I'm going to get 2 plus or minus 2i radical 2 all over 3, and this is going to be my final answer. I hope you found this video helpful. Remember to subscribe to my channel for more help with math so that you can say, yes, I can do math with confidence. Until next time, thanks for watching.